The afternoon after the big storm had hit Sodor, Donald and Henry were taking a drink at the water tower. "I've heard James has been sent to yon Peel Godred branch for a few days. How are ye and Gordon coping on the mainland with him gone?" Donald asked. Henry chuckled. "Gordon had to take a goods train this morning. He wouldn't have been pleased." "Well, the Fat Controller said it was only for today. Another engine's coming in to help out. He's due to arrive soon, I believe." "Sounds like it'll be a relief to both of ye," Donald commented. At that moment, a hoarse whistle drifted through the air. "Ye dinna say!" Donald exclaimed. "Does that sound familiar to ye, Henry?" "Yes. I only know one engine with a whistle like that." Henry's face fell a moment later. "Gordon won't be too happy about this." Donald looked over. "Dinna tell me he and Alfred are still carrying on with that wee argument of theirs." "I'm afraid so, Donald," Henry replied. "Would ye happen to ken what that's all about, Henry? It's been going on for a while, I understand."
"Since 1923, Donald, when Gordon first came to the railway. It's a long story, and I'm afraid I have to go and get my next train."
All the same, Henry couldn't help smiling as he passed Alfred, who was heading for the sheds. It was good to see him again. Early the next morning, Gordon backed down into the sheds. He'd stayed at Barrow-in-Furness overnight, and had returned on an early morning passenger service. "Hello, Gordon," Alfred said. Gordon looked over suspiciously. "You're not planning on causing any incidents this time, Alfred?" An angry scowl crossed Alfred's face. "Honestly, Gordon, I thought you'd let that go. I mean, you warned me about that snowdrift the last time I was here." "I was thinking of the passengers," Gordon replied coldly, "which is something you failed to do when you tried to—" "Yes, all right. As I've told you before, Gordon, that was an Oh, never mind." It was an old argument, and one which Alfred was beginning to get tired of. He quickly puffed off, before Gordon could say another word.
He soon arrived in the yard and stopped next to where Diesel was shunting some trucks. His argument with Gordon had put him in a bad mood, but he tried to be polite. After all, this was the first time he'd met Diesel. "Excuse me, I'm Alfred. I believe you have some trucks for me?" Diesel glanced over impatiently. "About time you got here. They're on that track over there. I need it for these trucks, so hurry up and take them." Alfred was taken aback by Diesel's rudeness. Following his argument with Gordon, it was the last straw. "Typical," he said. "I've met you Class 8s before. You're all the same. Rough, rude boxes on wheels." "Well, you steamies." Diesel was interrupted as Alfred wheezed at him, then puffed off to get his trucks. Later that night, Diesel's mood hadn't improved. His encounter with Alfred that morning had been the start of a bad day, and the trucks weren't helping matters. Diesel hadn't found that song funny the first time he'd come to Sodor, and it definitely wasn't funny now. "Stop singing!" Diesel growled. He bumped the trucks hard. Too hard. They bust through the buffers and careened out onto the 2-yard tracks. They were blocking both lines. A familiar whistle rang out a moment later. A horrified look crossed Diesel's face as Henry steamed into the yard. The green engine braked hard, but it was too late. He slammed into the trucks, his front wheels thrown off the rails.
Alfred soon arrived with the breakdown train, and a very unhappy Fat Controller. "What about tonight's kipper?" Henry asked. "I won't be ready in time to pick it up." "Alfred, you'll have to take it," the Fat Controller said. "But what about that fast goods I was due to take, sir?" The fast goods in question was important, as it took dairy products such as milk to the mainland. It was just as urgent as the flying kipper. "Take as much of it as you can with the kipper. Diesel will follow with the rest," replied the Fat Controller. 10 minutes later, Alfred had been coupled up to the dairy train. He was preparing to leave with the 5 tank cars when Diesel pulled up alongside. "Are you sure you'll be able to pull that and the kipper?" Diesel asked, thinking of the time another engine had tried to take a similarly long train. "I know what I can handle," Alfred replied rudely, before heading off to pick up the flying kipper at the docks. After picking up the flying kipper, Alfred was making good time along the main line. "That's silly, Diesel," Alfred said to himself. "I'm not having any problems with this train." With a clear line ahead, Alfred's driver opened his throttle to give him a good run at Gordon's Hill. Alfred charged up the hill, but he could feel the trucks pulling him back. Come on, Alfred chuffed to the trucks, but it was no good. Despite Alfred's efforts, the train slowed to a halt halfway up the hill. He tried vainly to restart it, with his wheels slipping on the wet rails. "It's no good, Alfred," his driver said. "We'll have to double the hill." Alfred reluctantly agreed. Dividing the train into halves and making 2 trips would be the best option, but he would have to do it quickly. Gordon was due through with the evening Wildnorwester on the express line, and Alfred didn't want the express engine to see him. Meanwhile, the station master at Wellsworth had flagged Diesel to a halt. "Alfred's stuck on the hill," he said. "Can you help?" "Of course," Diesel replied. "They couldn't leave the line blocked. What would the Fat Controller say?" Diesel quickly shunted his trucks into a nearby siding, then headed off to help Alfred. He found Alfred stopped at the bottom of the hill. "Would you like a hand, Alfred?" Alfred knew this wasn't a time for pride. "Yes, thank you," he replied. Diesel gently buffered up to Alfred's train, and the 2 engines set off. Eventually, they reached the top of the hill. "Thank you, Diesel. I can take it from here," Alfred called as the train crested the hill. It was early the next morning when Diesel arrived at Barrow-in-Furness. He found Alfred in the Northwest Railway's roundhouse there. "Thank you for your help earlier," Alfred said. "It's not the first time that's happened. I did try to warn you." "Yes, you did. I believe I owe you an apology for what I said to you yesterday morning. I think I got the wrong impression about you. As the victim of a misperception myself, I know exactly how that feels. I'm sorry, Diesel." Diesel was slightly taken aback. This sort of apology was the last thing he was expecting. "Well, thank you, Alfred." "You're welcome, Diesel." As Diesel turned on the turntable, he couldn't help wondering exactly what Alfred had meant. Maybe, he thought, he would find out one day.
Later that day, Alfred delivered a replacement transformer to the Peel-Godred branch. With that done, the Peel-Godred branch would soon return to normal, and it would be time for him and Stepney to return to the Bluebell Railway.